Hey players, so y'all know I've been reporting on this stuff with the Supreme Court, and today the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing on Supreme Court ethics, and they are asking for the Supreme Court to create a transparent code of ethical conduct that the justices will follow. However, there seems to be a lot of pushback from people like Freddie Cruz, Lindsay Booty Graham, and Hopeless Holly. Y'all know Chief Justice Roberts declined an invitation from the Senate Judiciary Committee to testify, saying that it would be a breach of separation of powers. Now, Chairman Dick Durbin opened the hearing by asking a very significant question: how low can the Supreme Court go? Because the highest court in the land seems to have the lowest standards for ethics. Federal judges have an ethical code of conduct. Members of Congress have an ethical code of conduct. And also, senior executive branch officials have a code of conduct. But the Supreme Court does not have one. So Freddie Cruz did the exact same thing he did the other day. In fact, I feel like it was practice for him to go on to 4 News and say, oh, well, the Democrats don't like Justice Thomas because he's a black conservative.
This is a political campaign designed to smear Justice Clarence Thomas. And the reason is simple. The left despises Clarence Thomas. And they do not despise him because he's a conservative. The left despises Clarence Thomas because he is a conservative African-American. I
declare, honey, what a disgrace. Freddie Cruz once again pulling out that black card. It's just a shame his ass ain't black and he don't know what the hell he talking about. But I digress. Now, Hopeless Holly took another approach, and actually Freddie Cruz dabbled in this too, and they brought up some letter that was allegedly sent by some Democrats saying that they needed to withhold funding from the Supreme Court if they did not comply with creating a code of ethics.
Congress should withhold appropriations. Withhold appropriations. And then they go on to say, nothing stops Congress from treating the judiciary any differently than any other entity of government when faced with judicial recalcitrance. So here we have judicial recalcitrance. These darn judges won't do what we tell them to do, so we're going to compel them to do what we want, and we're going to use the appropriations power. They're
calling it coercion and extortion for the American people to want the Supreme Court to create a code of ethics. I declare. They also brought up some trips that were taken by some other Supreme Court justices, some that were paid for by universities, you know, things like that. However, they didn't say if RBG or Justice Scalia or any of those other justices actually disclosed those trips. I can guarantee you that they did, because if they didn't disclose them, Freddie Cruz and Hopeless Holly definitely would have pointed it out.
Just about every Supreme Court justice has done so, and done so in much greater numbers. Justice Thomas was appointed in 1991. In the time since then, he's taken 109 reported trips, 5 international trips. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed in 1993, 2 years later. In the time she was on the court, she took 157 trips, including 28 international trips. Justice Stephen Breyer, appointed the year later in 1994, took 233 reported trips, including 63 international trips.
You know, I'm not surprised to see Freddie Cruz, Lindsay Booty Graham, or Hopeless Holly defend unethical behavior coming from the Supreme Court. I mean, look at who we're talking about. The argument that Democrats are working hard to delegitimize the conservative Supreme Court is absolutely ridiculous, because at the end of the day, the conservative Supreme Court, with everything that's been coming out in the washing and the ranching, has delegitimized itself. Players, put your thoughts in the comments. This is Double D Mo for the Black Accurate News.
Only a decade ago, 2/3 of Americans said they had confidence in the court. And now it's exactly opposite. About 2/3 say that they have little or no confidence in the court.